Off the Record with the Indiana 250 is presented by Prolific. When what worked stops working, I point purpose-driven leaders to Prolific, the growth firm. They turn plans into results with full-service marketing and strategy focused on outcomes, not vanity metrics. Head to prolifichq.com to learn more.
As I stated earlier, our mission is our mission, and that is to help African American youth thrive and excel so they can be successful, and as a part of that success, make tremendous contributions to the community and to the society in which we live.
Welcome to Off the Record, a podcast featuring leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media, which publishes the Indiana 250, a list of the most influential business people in Indiana. Welcome to Off the Record, a podcast featuring leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media, which publishes the Indiana 250, a list of the most influential business people in the state. Today, I'm joined by Dennis Bland, president of the Center for Leadership Development in Indianapolis. The Center for Leadership Development might be one of the most effective, yet under-the-radar nonprofits in our city. Dennis and the organization work tirelessly to inspire and teach minority youth and set them up for academic and career success. More than 50,000 Indianapolis kids have benefited from CLD's instruction since it was founded 48 years ago. And Dennis was one of those 50,000 kids. And like many of them, he learned life lessons the hard way. He and his 7 siblings were born to Mississippi sharecroppers who moved to the Riverside Park neighborhood in Indianapolis looking for opportunity. Dennis's mother died when he was just 5 years old, leaving his dad to provide for and raise the children, something his dad did with the help from neighbors and friends who rallied around the family. Seeing and experiencing how others stepped up to help his family is something that stuck with Dennis as he grew up. He eventually graduated from Broad Ripple High School as a decorated student and student athlete. The Center for Leadership Development, still relatively new at that time, noticed his potential and recruited Dennis to CLD's leadership training program. And he made the most of it. The lessons he learned at CLD helped him as he earned a bachelor's degree at DePaul University, and then graduated from the IU McKinney School of Law in Indianapolis. After earning his law degree, Dennis spent a decade in private practice, but he never forgot CLD. He volunteered as a teacher and a mentor and served on the organization's board while he was practicing law. He was on the board when CLD's founding president retired, and he was pressed by his board peers to pursue the job. And after some initial hesitation, he applied and he was hired as CLD's second president in March of 2000. Over the last quarter century, he's led the organization to new heights, raising millions of dollars for construction of a headquarters and then later a headquarters expansion. Under his leadership, CLD has expanded its programs and forged partnerships with companies and universities, creating pathways to college and careers for CLD students. Over the course of his long career, Dennis has picked up alumni honors from every school he's ever attended, and he has served on many boards, among them the Tobias Center on Leadership, Citizens Energy Group, and the Indiana Commission for Higher Education, to which he was appointed by Indiana Governor Frank O'Bannon and then later reappointed by Governor Mitch Daniels. Despite numerous awards and board appointments, Dennis has remained a low-key but powerful advocate for our city's youth by always focusing on and reminding others of CLD's mission, helping our city's minority youth succeed. Even though he's more interested in his organization's mission than in his personal recognition, Dennis is about to add a new award to his long list of accolades. On December 11th, 2 days after this podcast is released, Dennis will be honored at IBJ Media's Innovate Indianapolis Breakfast as the 32nd winner of IBJ's Michael A. Carroll Award, an award we give annually to someone in our community who has demonstrated the qualities of determination, humility, and service that Mike Carroll, a former deputy mayor of Indianapolis, was very well known for. We'd be hard-pressed to find someone more deserving of the award than Dennis Bland. Dennis, we'll welcome you to Off the Record podcast. I'm honored to have you as my guest today.
Thank you for having me, Nate. It's an honor.
Absolutely, absolutely. I did want to correct, I think it's a lunch, not a breakfast, in case anyone's listening to the podcast and wants to see the Michael A. Carroll Award. I'm pretty sure we've got that as a lunchtime feature this year. So there's a lot to dig in here, Dennis. I mentioned your childhood. And maybe things that happened in your childhood that would influence your career and your career path, where you ended up now serving for, as I mentioned, 25 years as the leader of Center for Leadership Development. What are some of the memories that may have impacted your career path as a child, with growing up in a household with 7 brothers and sisters? That's quite a household. You had to compete, I would think, back then.
Again, Nate, thanks for having me. Ax, as I look back on that moment, there are sobering thoughts. There are thoughts around appreciating what's really important around life and about life. So the appreciative part is just seeing how much family means when, in many respects, family is all you have.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is the appreciation, the fun without much, but 7 brothers and sisters, you'll find a way to make something fun out of anything.
I'm sure.
But then I also appreciate the struggle. I do remember as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, there was a pot of beans on in the middle of the table every day. And that was your meal each day. And so I remember everybody had a spoon. I always seemed to get the rusty spoon. But the dinner table every day, and just the emphasis on family, but then seeing people make a way, seeing other people, other neighbors, the church especially, step up to help you make a way. Those are the things that are the deepest memories for me, because those are the things that seem to have been impactful for me and a guiding light through the rest of my life.
Yeah, and you mentioned neighbors, church stepping up to help your family. Your family had a single father who was raising you and your siblings. Talk about, I know you live it every day, helping others, but talk a little bit about how, when you saw others stepping up to help you and your family, how that impacted your career path, your decision to eventually lead CLD.
Sure. I still remember these army bags coming. They looked like the color green bags, and there would be clothes in the bags. And there were people donating clothes to our family. Well, I never thought, hey, these are hand-me-downs, or it was always like, it was Christmas. Like, oh man, how cool. In fact, I do remember one day walking around in these strange shoes, and I'm kind of walking around on the floor like, I don't know what kind of shoes these are, but these are cool. I learned later they were cleats.
Is that right?
But again, I remember the items coming in the bag. I remember, again, people always being around to be helpful. And well, along with that, I also learned from my father. He was the constant, and he was the one who was working 3 jobs, literally, but he always seemed to have time to help somebody else who was in need. And so as people talk about my life and my life of service, that was something that I got directly from my father, both in terms of how he, first and foremost, just always looked out for his family, but then how he demonstrated how important it was for him that he modeled his faith by saying, even as I try and make it through life, how can I be of help, and how can I be of benefit to somebody else who's in need? And that lesson has never left me.
Yeah. Impactful, I know. So I mentioned that you were a standout student athlete at Broad Ripple High School. And during that time, you had an inquiry from CLLD, or a letter saying, hey, we want to talk to you. We'd love you to be part of our program. And my understanding is that first letter that was sent your way, that first reach out, was maybe a little bit ignored or lost. Or tell us a little bit kind of what that experience was like the first time that the CLD reached out to you, and what happened.
Yeah, and as strange as it may sound, I remember that moment so vividly. I remember receiving a letter from this organization that's focused on youth development. And I wasn't familiar with the organization. And of course, there was a lot of things going on in terms of high school, the sports commitments. So I just didn't follow up on the letter. I didn't discard it. I just didn't act on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I remember then receiving a follow-up letter. And the follow-up letter had something, it read to the effect, you were identified as a person who has potential to lead. Well, leaders tend to respond and acknowledge communications, and we didn't receive communications from you. And that really got my goat. I was like, what are you talking about? And it's like, well, oh, okay. I didn't know it was that big a deal. So I'll respond. And so that's how I got involved in the Center for Leadership Development. Well, fast forward, and I'm actually an employee at the Center for Leadership Development. Fast forward from 1982 to 2000, and I'm speaking with the lady who was over programming at the Center for Leadership Development. And I told her about my experience, and she looks at me with a puzzled look. And she says, Dennis, I don't deny that you received that letter, but I'll just tell you that that's highly unusual in terms of our administrative practice. We don't typically make it a habit of responding or following up to students who don't reply to our inquiries. So what made somebody else follow up with you, I have no idea, but that's an unusual practice. So, and the short of it is there are just a few things that happened along the way that just tended to signal to me that this would be my life's work.
Yeah, that's quite a signal. And of course, these are the days way before email or cell phones, so they were trying hard to get you to be part of the organization, and that's a really neat story. That's really neat. So fast forward, you're practicing law, and you decided to. I assume something hit you. You said, "I need to give back to this organization," and you began to volunteer as you were practicing an attorney and get re-engaged with the organization.
Yeah, in fact, right after college, they invited me back and asked if I would serve as a volunteer. I was like, oh, wow, I'd be honored to give back. And in fact, the people they call them facilitators, they're leaders, you learn curriculum and you share the curriculum with the participants. I'd be honored. I never thought you all kind of saw me in that group because facilitators are really highly looked upon at the center. And I said, well, I'll do this for a few years. Well, it turned into 13 years.
Yeah.
Basically going over to the center 26 weeks a year, 2.5 hours a week, because they came and you did 13-week cohorts, spring and fall. So I would do that for 26 weeks a year. And on through my first job out of college, on through law school, on through the practice of law. That became my thing.
Yeah.
Up until 2000. So I didn't think that it would last that long, but what was happening was, number one, I was clearly interested in the work, in the service, but along the way, I was also seeing the gaps. I was appreciating what success required, but I was also seeing the lack or the gap of understanding of that young people had in terms of what was required to actually make their aspirations actualize. And so I became more immersed, more interested in the work until after 13 years of volunteering, and ultimately went to work there.
So that leads me to my next question. I know when the founding president, Henry Bundles, retired, you were on the board, but you were a little hesitant when some members of the board came to you and said, Dennis, we'd love for you to lead this organization next. And my understanding is that you initially said, nah, that's probably not right for me, but then changed your mind. But tell us the story, if that's accurate, what made you change your mind?
Sure. And again, after a few instances, people can call it what they will, but I know ultimately it was a calling. I was actually on the search committee.
Okay.
So I had no interest whatsoever in working at the Center for Leadership Development. I certainly valued volunteering there and doing the work that we were doing. It was actually a board member who said at one of the meetings, Dennis, it just seems like this position is made for you. Her name was Mildred Ball. And I'll never forget it because she just seemed to be insistent about it over the course of 6 or 7 months of the process. She may have mentioned it 5 times. Like, Dennis, I know I keep pestering you about it, but it just seems like this position is for you. I know you're practicing law. I know you have your path in your career, but it just seems like it. And so without boring you with the details, it went from me not having an interest to applying for the position and then being selected for the position.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. So I'm curious, you've seen, because you've been involved and really a participant, you've seen the organization, really over the last, 40 plus years, you've been engaged. So talk a little bit about how CLD, to the extent it has, changed in terms of its mission, in terms of its outreach, in terms of its engagement in the community, from the time you were a student to today. What are some of kind of the when you look at kind of big picture changes, and maybe there aren't any, maybe it's exactly the same, but I'm curious from your perspective, what are the things that stick out to you over that long period of time?
Sure. I think the constant has been a commitment, a steadfast commitment to mission. Like no mission drift, no deviation. You have a very good, important mission. Be dedicated to it. Don't stray.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 has been a constant focus on creating the best programming that you can offer. As I like to say, programming at the Center for Leadership Development is what coffee is to Columbia. It is your everything. If your programming isn't solid, young people's thoughts aren't changing, attitudes aren't changing, perspectives aren't changing. It's a wonder what quality experiences can do.
Mm-hmm.
And so what has been a constant has been the organization's commitment to trying to design the most impactful and effective experiences, kind of expertise the realm of youth development programming. So how do you build expertise? And in fact, the organization has had a constant of saying, well, what are the greatest doing that you can emulate, irrespective of industry? So we want to know what Lilly is doing. What are the best doing at what they do and what makes them excellent at what they do? Well, we want to understand the kernels or the insights, the principles that make them excellent, and we want to apply that to the realm of youth development space. And so that's also been a constant. How do you continue to think, to innovate, but it's all around the business of, as we like to say, being the best successologist on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Can you become expert in teaching young people how to make the potential of success turn into the actualization of success? And so that's, over the years, what has changed has been the breadth and the depth of the experiences that have been created. So when I went through the Center for Leadership Development, there was one program targeting 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. Today, there have been 20 programs added to that one program, and the entry point is now 4th grade. Wow. So you can now course through 21 programs and after-school experiences from the time you're 10 years old until the time you're graduating from high school, with these integrated, related experiences that are designed to go through an experience, participate, and then move or pass to the next program in the academy from the time you're in 4th grade to the time you're 12th. And so the Center for Leadership Development offers one of the most comprehensive after-school program menus that you'll find in the youth organization anywhere in the country, with this kind of smorgasbord of enriching experiences. And so that is just the fierce intentionality around creating a quality experience that has young people saying, oh, I'm thinking differently.
Yeah.
I'm processing life differently. I know I'm going to school, but I had no idea that's what an education, that's what it means, that's what it does. So the enriching experiences, in fact, if I could share that our entire program model is based upon and created based upon a 3-part analysis. Question number 1 in the analysis, where do you want your young people to be? If you had your druthers, where would every young person in the nation be? Well, that's our mission. That's our North Star, professional, business, and community leaders. And then question number 2 in the analysis, and where are they currently? And we always say, now think about it soberly, because if you want there to be success, then you have to be honest. Where are they academically? Where are they culturally? Where are they socially? Are you in 10th grade reading at 11th grade level? Are you in 8th grade reading at a 3rd grade level? We want to know where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And then question number 3 in the analysis, given where we want you to be and given where you are, what is the most meaningful, relevant experience we can offer, that we can create, that meets you where you are, that helps usher and move you and catapult you to where we want you to be? And then that determines what programming comes online to make up what is now 21. And then in addition to that, we have what's called a College Prep Institute. So we have a comprehensive college and career resource center that's available to the entire community. So now a person can actually, we've taken the whole concept of the guidance counseling office and extended it from outside of the school and into the community, so it's accessible to anybody who wants these types of services that helps them level up and prepare.
Mm-hmm. So today, how many kids are part of the programs that you just described, the 21 programs? How many kids today in a given year are participating in a program? And I'm assuming, just based on the number of programs, that it's been exponential growth in terms of the number of kids that you can touch and you can be, be impactful towards. Give us a feel for what those numbers look like today.
Sure. Last year, we served 4,300 students and parents. So in 2024, there was 4,300, and we actually had students through the course of a year participating in the Center for Leadership Development who came from or represented 242 different schools.
Wow.
Throughout our state. So elementary, middle, and high school, 242 schools were represented.
And are those kids, are they being, like you were identified by your school, are those kids being identified still in a similar fashion, or how did the kids find you and the opportunity with the Center for Leadership Development?
I'd say one thing that has changed is that we are going out and pursuing young people.
Mm-hmm.
There are no academic requirements, minimum GPA requirements. We say as long as you're in school and as long as you know how to behave, or you're willing to learn how to behave very quickly, then we want you in the program. There'll be enough times in life later on where you'll be singled out or excluded because you didn't qualify or meet some standard. Right now, we want to get you ready so that you can actually meet some of these standards that you can't currently satisfy. So yeah, we would go out to schools, go out to churches, go out to community organizations where they're having community fairs. Everywhere where we can find young people, sports programs, we just want to expose them to those experiences.
And are there inherent limitations on the number of kids that you can bring in? Meaning, do you only have so much funding and operational capacity to serve a certain number of students, or are you some years saying, "Gosh, I wish we had more engagement, more kids that would come into the program because we have capacity"? How does that look today?
Yeah, wonderful question. In fact, we believe that we can triple the number of participants we have within the next 3 years.
Wow.
So we had a campaign, and you alluded to it in your very kind introduction. We had a campaign that allowed us to build some capacity so that we would be ready for the next iteration of the Center for Leadership Development. And that would be where we could not only continue to strengthen the quality and the depth, the richness of the experience, but then we can also get many more young people into those experiences, mm-hmm. and many more parents into those experiences. So, for example, right now, we actually have a group of students who are actually commuting via bus from Columbus once a week for our 13-week leadership program. And you have students coming from Wayne Township, Lawrence Township, who are coming via bus And so we want to see more of that over the next 3 years. So we think by 2028, we can move that number up to 11,000 students and families a year, with 4,000 of that 11,000 actually coming from what we're describing as the most under-resourced population. So if you're in a high crime, low income area, we are coming to you. We're offering programs in those communities. We've been doing it over the last few years, but we want to intensify that. So we really are intentional about making sure that the students are really dialed into what success looks like and what success requires.
That's fantastic to see that growth ahead, or have that goal ahead is fantastic. So, you've made a statement. You consider the Center for Leadership Development to be, quote, a program with no assumptions. I'm curious to have you explain that a little bit. Tell us what that means.
I think oftentimes we're on the way to trying to help young people succeed. I think over time and over generations, we begin to make assumptions around what people should know, where they should be, versus, again, to my 3-part analysis earlier, actually assessing where people actually are so you can meet them where they are. The program of no assumptions, for example, says, Nate, go and do your homework. Okay, well, I'll go do my homework. The program of no assumptions would say, Nate, thanks for your willingness to go and do your homework. Nate, you're 17 years old. Has anyone ever sat down and spent 30 minutes with you actually teaching you how to study? Well, no. I've been given this assignment for a long time, but no one has ever actually taught me how to study. And so there are a lot of young people who are being sent to go and study. And if someone actually observed or they witnessed what that study session looked like, it would be frightening to some people, especially those who know better. So the program of no assumption says, if it's important to your success, then we won't assume that you know how to do it. In fact, we will take the route of actually asking questions, and we'll be prepared in the event you have no idea around what actualization of that looks like, or the performance of that. And so we don't assume that you know how to study. We don't assume that you understand the importance of an education. We don't assume that you understand what leadership is. You may know the word. We don't assume that you understand. We want to actually take you through training, and then we want to see for ourselves. And what we find out is that you have instances where young people, I really do know that. Oh, this is good. Oh, we can build on that. But then you have a number of instances where you actually have revelation moments. And young people are literally saying, oh, is that what an education is? Oh, is that how that works? Hey, I knew education as math and science, and I find it boring. I certainly did not understand education as a commodity. I had no idea that people were attaining an education and cutting deals. I have a science background. I have a med school background, and now with this knowledge, this skill, I can remove a bad heart and put in a good one. And people pay me handsomely for it. They're cutting deals, and there are a lot of young people in society who have no idea. Because again, the program, you didn't assume that they understood. You actually create curricula. It's kind of like, they call them appreciation classes. We talk a lot about giving an education on an education, propaedeutics, I think the educators call it. We want to be so basic and so elemental that you miss nobody. And you're so basic with it that someone begins to say, because you started at that level, I'm starting to understand why there was someone in class studying 3 hours when I have no interest in studying. I'm starting to get it. And that's what we want. We say, I'm so glad that there was the Malcolm X model where there was a person who could not read. He was illiterate. He got incarcerated. He received an education on an education. And as they say, the rest is history. He went on a tear because I understand the value. Well, we say we love the model. We just don't want you to get incarcerated before you figure out how powerful this this commodity is. We want to actually get you upstream, help you understand as a fourth grader, and then we don't have these deviating paths where now you're climbing to excel and ascend. You aren't climbing to get from 250 feet or 3,000 feet below sea level just to get level. We want you to spend your time and energy climbing to the heights.
Yeah. That's well said. And now I understand that quote. More ahead with Dennis Bland, president of Center for Leadership Development, when we return to Off the Record podcast presented by Prolific. Stay with us. Most organizations hit a point where growth stalls. The message blends in, the site stops converting, the pipeline softens. That's when I tell leaders about Prolific, the growth firm for purpose-driven leaders. Through full-service marketing and strategy, they clarify the story, rebuild your go-to-market, and drive sales. Most importantly, Prolific holds itself accountable to the metrics that matter to you. If you're ready for your next growth stage, learn more about Prolific at prolifichq.com. Welcome back to Off the Record podcast. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media, and I'm talking today with Dennis Bland, the president of the Center for Leadership Development, which teaches and mentors our city's minority youth, setting them up for academic and career success. So, Dennis, I want to jump into an area where I know you've been working really hard, which is to build partnerships with businesses, colleges, and universities around the state, and to really help the students that are part of the program to really excel and to have pathways for success and continuing their education. As you know, and I know, we've been in, especially this past year, in a real climate that's political climate that's changed. DEI is no longer acceptable, at least in terms of the naming things, and there's legal changes and all those kinds of things. And I'm curious, just in terms of what that change in climate and change in reality from a regulatory or from a legal perspective has meant for some of those partnerships that you work so hard to build, especially university partnerships. Has that caused issues, problems? Have there been losses of opportunities for some of the minority youth that you work so hard to give a hand up and a leg up in life?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the question, and I'll just respond by going back to your question, your earlier questions, just around the mission of the Center for Leadership Development.
Yeah.
What has changed? I just think it's always important for the Center for Leadership Development to be mission focused, as I stated earlier. Our mission is our mission, and that is to help African American youth thrive and excel so they can be successful, and as a part of that success, make tremendous contributions to the community and to the society in which we live. Like, we want you to contribute. We want you to be prepared. In fact, our tagline is cultivating character, empowering youth, enriching community. So we said we want to empower you. We want to equip you with these 5 powerful values so that you're equipped so that you can go out into your community and really enrich the spaces where you show up. Because when you have these 5 values, then places are fertilized, and that's why colleges want you, places of employment want you, neighbors want you, because you're equipped and empowered. So we've been steadfast in the mission. As a result of the current policies and the current climate, it has impacted some of our relationships with the higher education community. And what has happened is some of the schools have pulled out those scholarships, even though all these scholarships are based upon merit. In fact, when you go through those MOU agreements that we have with higher education institutions, Nate, the interesting part was these scholarships actually started about 20 years ago when the higher education community learned about the work that the Center for Leadership Development was doing to actually prepare students for college.
Mm-hmm.
And they were so impressed with a college prep institute or a college prep program where students and parents are actually literally going through curricula program when they're in high school and when they're in middle school, actually learning about college success. This is how you study. This is how you take notes. This is how you prepare for tests. This is how you advocate for yourself around a grade. I had a conversation with one of the higher education leaders, a college president, about 23 years ago. He says, I'm not aware of the Center for Leadership Development. Can you tell me more about it? I shared more about him. And then he said, are there any Center for Leadership Development participants who've come to our university? And I said, well, actually, I could do you better, Mr. President, two better. You actually have 2 Center for Leadership Development alumni who are on your faculty. And his eyes got big, and he was stupefied. And I gave him the names. I said, in Romance languages and English composition, Dr. Manny Harris and Dr. Rhonda Henry. And I said, yeah, the programming really does work. And then he said, well, if you can continue to generate talent like that, we're going to commit to providing 2 scholarships if the students complete your leadership program. This 13-week leadership program seems to really change lives. And if they complete the college prep program, the 8-module program for students and parents, then they become eligible to apply for these scholarships. Mm-hmm. That's how those scholarships started, just based upon the high performance of the students and the higher education community saying, you're actually helping us. You're performing a lot of our college admissions and college readiness. We will gladly partner. And so that's what's been happening. So some of the colleges, the more they learn about this, the more they say, we've been talking more about the legal climate. We haven't really investigated your programming. And then the bottom line has been, we also understand that this is not about a race or a minority. Ultimately, what you all are doing is cultivating talent. You're mm-hmm. cultivating principal leaders, and that's what we're trying. That's what we need. And so those conversations have actually mollified the circumstances some.
Well, good. That's good feedback. I want to talk a little bit about funding. We're recording this podcast on what's called Giving Tuesday, and I'm curious from your perspective. You're a nonprofit competing for dollars. There's a lot of nonprofits in this community that are doing good work, but how much does the Center for Leadership Development count on the generosity of donors in this community? And maybe talk a little bit about how your funding works, and if there are any CLD partners that have been particularly important to you over time.
Yeah, first of all, one of the reasons we take this work so seriously is because we understand that we would not be in a position to do this work and sustain the work if there were not for very kind and very generous and trusting people who've entrusted their resources to the Center for Leadership Development. And so we're just always 100% big on stewardship and trying to steward people's dollars and their investments and their trust. So we're thankful because we understand we would not be able to do this work unless there was that trust and unless that support were sustained. Our programming is designed to give people the opportunity to step up and level up and prepare how to be successful, even if they don't have the resources to take advantage of these experiences, these life-growing experiences. So for example, we have a college prep institute, as I mentioned earlier. Last year, we provided guidance counseling services and tutoring services, math, English, calculus. We provided services to 1,900 students and families last year in our college prep institute. Those families received those services at no charge to them. We paid $67,000 out of our operating budget to pay those counselors and those tutors so that those families could have those enriching services. Mm-hmm. And so the families didn't pay, but the funders that you described, that you talked about earlier, they are the ones who are underwriting the cost. We have a 13-week leadership program. I would give that program to any young person in the country if you wanted them to succeed. It is that powerful. It is that rich. That program costs the Center for Leadership Development $500 for each person we take through that 13-week program. The families pay $25. So folks are entities like, of course, Lilly Endowment, who help so many people represented on our board, ONB and our board chair, John Otteson, PNC. There have been a number of entities that have underwritten the work of the Center for Leadership Development so that we can provide these enriching services and experiences without dollars or costs inhibiting or serving as an inhibitor to their participation.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to turn back to you a little bit and ask you. We always ask our podcast guests on the Indiana 250 Off the Record podcast about mentors that have been important to them, both in their personal life or certainly in their professional life. I'm curious who some of those might be for you.
Perhaps silently, some of the richest experiences that I've had in my life, which has led to some successes at the Center for Leadership Development, has been because I've gotten a PhD by knowing how to sit in a CLLD boardroom and be as quiet as I can and take as many notes as I can. So I have had the privilege and the blessing of literally sitting in a boardroom, and there have been board chairs, just remarkable men who have chaired the board, remarkable men and women who've served on the board. And you just understand this assemblage of talent. It would only be if you are paying for it or because they have a good heart and they're trying to do some good work. Well, I've always learned that when you have that kind of talent in the room, just be as quiet as you can, take as many notes as you can, and see if you can amplify your ears and the quality of it. Because I've gotten a PhD from these folks who have mentored people like Steve Steidel and Bob Bowen and Tom King and Jerry Semler, just titans. And just by having the privilege of serving in the mission and having that mission in common, so many of them have mentored in so many ways. But certainly my father, he's the GOAT. I tell him all the time, I'm honored that I know you. I'm privileged and over the moon that you're actually my father. I can say you're my father, and I tell the truth. So it was so sobering that, yes, I lost my mother at 5, but then it's also sobering to know I'm actually the son of a man that I think is just one of the greatest persons on the planet. And so, as they say, to whom much is given, much is expected. My father's just always taught. If there were 5 things that I take away from his life, just summarize, this is what he taught his family. 5 principles: always honor and serve God. Always look out for your family. Work hard. Go and get an education like you're on fire. And then always, always look out for the person who's in need. And so those are the mentoring that he's taught me that I've tried to apply in my life.
That's amazing. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. I want to turn to higher education because you've served, on the state's highest board of Commission for Higher Education, and you served on the Indiana Education Roundtable. I'm just curious on your perspective, given your service at that level, when you think of the higher education current landscape, and you obviously live it every day with minority youth who are pursuing, you're working to help them achieve, higher education post high school. What do you think as a state we're doing well and maybe not so well? And one of the things that I am concerned about, as I'll just throw it out there and get any reaction you might have and see if you share it or not, is the number of our graduating high school students going on to any form of higher education, whether that be a community college or certificate that or a 4-year degree. The number has fallen off a cliff pretty dramatically over the course of the last 5-6 years, and I'm curious from your perspective, if you share that concern, or maybe there's alternative views out there for sure that gosh, well, there's a lot of opportunities in the trades. You don't need to go down to higher education always. That's not the right path for all. So just curious what given your experience, what you're seeing today with the youth that you're helping to move on to better lives. What do you feel like we're doing well and need to work on in the state?
In terms of the strengths, I've been impressed over the years to find citizens who are really dialed in to the whole enterprise of education. the transformative aspect of education and learning. Again, I would not understand that, but for having the privilege to serve on the Commission for Higher Education or the Indiana Education Roundtable.
Mm-hmm.
So you see a lot of people who are really committed. You see a lot of people who are really talented. We had the former commissioner, Chris Lowry. I mean, I really admired his passion, his intellect, his zeal around education and learning. And so you have those people who are really committed, and I met people from throughout the state. They are committed. I think one of the challenges and one of the drawbacks that we have as a state is that perhaps back to this notion of an education on an education. I think there are a lot of people who are pushing education who perhaps don't understand that there are people who don't understand or view or even conceptualize education as they do. And so they can't relate to why someone isn't going after this zealously when the opportunities are there. So you talked about the introduction of my father. He's helped us distinguish, like, if you really want to be successful in life, you have to be able to draw a ledger. And you have to be able to understand in the ledger whether there's opportunity available and then whether or not it's you and whether you're seizing the opportunity. He wanted education, but he could not attain it. He wanted it, but he couldn't. Today, we have students who have education, but I don't pursue it. So it's not that the opportunity isn't there, it's that I'm not interested in the opportunity that's presented. I'm not going to school, but it's not because the buses aren't running. I'm well aware of what time the buses come, and I'm not on that bus. I'm not on that bus line. And so a part of that goes back to the whole fundamental idea of, do you really understand or prize education and learning? And I think that's what one of the misses is across the state, because there's an assumption, because I value it, oh, well, everyone values education. Not true. And the more you can have that honest conversation, then the more you can say, then what can we do to actually try to stir or inspire someone to actually begin to appreciate or see value in something where they heretofore could not see the value of it. And so, like, oh, every parent wants their children to have a great education. Every parent wants their children to have a great education. That's not true. You have a number of parents who do. You have a number of parents who say, I don't want my child to go to school today. Well, why not? Because they don't want to go to school. I can remember years ago when they had changed the start time of school, and they found out that a number of the students were not attending the school. And the school district actually went out, and it was on camera. The news featured it. They went to some of the doors. They knocked on the doors and was like, I know you are used to school starting after Labor Day, but now they've moved it. Are you aware that they changed the school time? And they interview parents. Yes, I'm aware. You know, the school is going on right now. Yes, I'm aware. Is your son not going to school? No, my children are not going to school. Well, if you know school is going on, why aren't they going to school? Because when I grew up, school started after. And so my children will not go until after. So when we start talking about people valuing education or appreciating it, people mean well, but it has to be that honest conversation, because if you do that, then maybe our state begins to say we have to have a different approach, not assuming that people understand and appreciate this. But then what do you do if you recognize that some people don't understand and appreciate it? Then maybe your methods change, maybe marketing changes, and you begin to get people say, oh, that's what that is? Oh, man, I have to get involved in that. And that's what we see at the Center for Leadership Development. Hey, I'm starting to study now. I'm starting to take courses more seriously. I'm actually turning in my homework. That's because you've taken it from the broader lens to the one-on-one, and you have a chance to actually sit and have those conversations, and you just begin to see young people rationalize, and even families just say, oh, I just had no idea, or I didn't know it was that. And I think that's what the state needs. That's where we lack, and that's what we could do more of. That's
awesome perspective. Well, I could sit and talk to you for all afternoon because you're so knowledgeable and so inspiring, Dennis. But I've got to go to the off-the-record speed questions, as we call it, where I ask a number of kind of fun questions to get to know you even a little bit better and some of the things that you like and enjoy. So I'm going to start with your favorite movie.
3 Days of the Condor.
It's a good one. Favorite place to vacation?
Florida, probably Tampa.
Who is your favorite musical artist?
It's actually a group, the Williams Brothers.
Uh-huh. And what's the first thing you do in the morning?
Pray, exercise, and read my Bible.
How about the title of the last book you read?
Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Best advice you ever received?
My father says, lay low, peep high.
Advice for a young person that wants to become a leader in our community, maybe wants to become the next leader of a great organization like Center for Leadership Development or many others that are out there. What would be the best advice for someone who strives for leadership?
Understand the position of leadership, understand the power of leadership, and then understand whether or not the leadership that you want has proficiency and whether it has principle. And a lot of times people are suffering because I want the position of leadership. I want the power, oftentimes that is seen that comes with it, but I really lack the endowments that lead to effective leadership or impactful leadership or leadership that helps us get into a meaningful, worthy destination because I lack the principle. I lack the proficiency. I lack the skills and the endowments. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would tell young people. If you really want to be a leader, number one, qualify your leadership. Put some adjective to your leadership to say what type of leader do you want to be. And if it's an outstanding leader, then I would say, then understand what you have to acquire, what endowment you have to acquire so that you can actually become an effective, an outstanding leader. And I think that's principle. I think that's proficiency.
Yeah. It's great advice. Well, Dennis, I want to thank you so much for joining the Indiana 250 podcast. I want to congratulate you once again on winning the Michael A. Carroll Award. And I want to thank you for all you do for our community and for the youth of our community. You're a wonderful leader of a very important organization in our community. So thank you so much for what you're doing for our city and our state, Dennis.
Oh, Nate, thank you so much for the honor. Thanks to you and IBJ. Thank you for the trust and heartfelt thanks to the Carroll family. I'll try my level best to live in a way that's reflective of that family and that honor. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Dennis. To learn more about other leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list, go to indiana250.com and look for a Page 2 feature each week in IBJ. We'll be back with the new Indiana 250 off-the-record conversation soon.